Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football leagues. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is good, y'all? What is going on? Let's get this out of the way. We are back for another episode of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Austin, here to bring you that fantasy football coverage. Super excited to be here, and we are here every single weekday, Monday through Friday, starting at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, and that's when we go. That is the only time that you can catch me live. If you want to catch me on my exclusive fantasy football takes, the only place that I give them out is on the Patreon. You can sign up on the Patreon in the link in the description if you are so inclined. But super excited to be here, guys. We're brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Those are the people that allowed this whole thing to go on. So love them. Super excited to be here again. Make sure y'all like and subscribe if you're liking the content. Drop a comment if you have any suggestions or anything like that. I'm also willing to answer any questions that anybody has in the comments, fantasy football related or just football related in general. But without further ado, let's just get into, this episode of the podcast. I guess before we do that, we do have to talk about Lenny. Playoff Lenny, Leonard Fournette. It's week 5 now, guys. It is now week 5, and he is still not signed to a team. He is taking up a roster spot on my fantasy football squad, and I don't know how much longer I can allow him to do that because bro's still not even assigned to a roster. Free agent. He is not assigned to a team. Should we do Thursday or should we do Sunday? I guess week 5 technically starts on Thursday, so I think if he is not signed miraculously somehow by Thursday, I will be buying his jersey and burning it in a YouTube short that I will post for you guys to see. I've been talking about this for the last 5 weeks, how I would do that, so I cannot back down now. I promise I will get that done for y'all if he is not assigned to a roster by Thursday, unfortunately for me. Goodness gracious, Lenny, where you at, man? Where are you at? But you guys see it. We're going to start here with the injury report. That's going to be the first segment. Then we're going to jump into my winners and losers, my quarterback and tight end winners and losers from week 4. If y'all were here yesterday, y'all heard me talk about my running back and wide receiver winners and losers. Talked about some pretty good guys. Obviously, Stephon Diggs had a big day. He was probably the biggest winner from that segment. I guess Christian McCaffrey, too. Got to include him with those 48 fantasy points that he puts up. But I just expect that from this guy at this point. Going up against a really bad Cardinals defense, he was tearing them up. Colorado-born boy. Would love to, I'd love to see him drop a comment, watch the podcast, anything. That'd be so crazy. But first, guys, let's get into this injury report. Got to do it. And make sure y'all stretch that hamstring. Everybody dealing with the hamstring injury in the NFL right now, and it's very prominent at the moment. We're going to start off with Rashad Bateman, who is currently dealing with that hamstring injury. Did not play in week 4 and is questionable to play in week 5. Hamstring injury for him, so definitely not good. Monitor that situation. Got Odell Beckham Jr. Dealing with the ankle, also did not play in week 4 with his injury. And it doesn't, his whole season does not look very promising at this point. We'll see what happens with Odell Beckham, but him and Rashad Bateman did not play against the Browns. And it looks like they really didn't need him. Ravens got it done, like a 28-3 victory, but also the Browns were starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was obviously their backup because Deshaun Watson was injured. We'll talk about him in a second, too. Next, we got T. Higgins here, who put up another really, really bad performance in week 4. Just really terrible. Has only had one good game all year. So we're going to probably equate that a little bit to the fractured rib that he is dealing with. He acquired that injury on Sunday versus against the Ravens, and they got stomped on. Oh wait, no. they played somebody different. He did nothing. He did absolutely nothing. He's had one good week where he had the 2 touchdowns, and since then he has acquired the fractured rib, and it looks all bad for T. Higgins. But he did come out in the media saying that he does want to play Sunday versus Arizona, and he doesn't think that the rib is going to do too much damage to that happening. So definitely signs looking up in some way, but he needs to get it together on the field too. T. Higgins with the fractured rib. Next, we got Deshaun Watson. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, very solid quarterback when he's playing his best. A lot of media concerns with that guy, and he sat out in the Week 4 matchup where they got stomped on by the Ravens. That was a very unfortunate situation. Did not like to see Dorian Thompson-Robin out there. Would much rather see Deshaun Watson playing, and it was also his choice to not play in Week 4 with that shoulder contusion that he is going through. Obviously, I think he wanted to play, but it just didn't feel up to it. Wasn't going to be able to go out there and give his best to his team. So he sat out in that Week 4 matchup, and we're just going to have to monitor to see if he is going to somehow be available to play in Week 5. Dorian Thompson-Robinson in that game, 19 for 36, 121 yards, and 3 interceptions in his first start. So not looking good. They need Deshaun Watson back in the worst way. We also got news on Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor obviously was dealing with an ankle injury, but it seemed like the ankle injury was more just like they needed to assign him an injury because they wanted to put him on the physically unable to perform list, and he will actually be resuming practice Wednesday, so it doesn't look like the ankle is bothering him any longer. Praise God. For me, got Jonathan Taylor in both of my fantasy leagues. Literally I got Jonathan Taylor and Leonard Fournette. Just a crazy situation that I'm going through. Somehow, guys, I literally backdoored my way into my first win in my fantasy league where I'm the commissioner. I told everybody in the league that I was going to be winning this entire league, and obviously it's only because, guys, I have Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor on my bench. Week 5, we're getting them back, hopefully. So things are looking up for me. I'm very excited to see what these guys can do. And let's talk about Cooper Kupp as well, dealing with the hamstring injury. I think he was also on the PUP list or the IR list, something like that. But he will be resuming practice this week after dealing with the hamstring. So very, very excited for Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp to finally make their debuts in 2023. Very excited. Let's talk Saquon Barkley here. Saquon was dealing with that high ankle sprain that he had sustained in Week 2 versus the Cardinals when they had that crazy comeback where Daniel Jones was actually able to do something on offense and carried them to a win. Saquon Barkley was a huge part of that win, and I believe that's definitely their only win of the season that they have got thus far. But Saquon Barkley does say that there's a chance for him to play in Week 5, so definitely monitor that injury moving forward throughout the week. He's going to get a lot of volume whenever he is back because they need him badly in that Giants offense. Next guy, we're going with Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth, pretty solid tight end, plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously tight end number 1 over there and holds a pretty decent target share. He's dealing with a hamstring right now, and he's going to be sitting out for 2 to 3 weeks, which is definitely not good for the Steelers. Just got smacked by the Houston Texans in a game where they were 2.5-point favorites, lost by like 20 plus, and Pickett did not look good. Obviously, Pat Freiermuth is going to be one of his favorite targets to get that short yardage. Just a big guy that can box other defenders out, and he's going to be sitting down for 2 to 3 weeks too. So no Pat Freiermuth for the next couple weeks. Then we got Kenny Pickett, who during that game versus the Texans went down with a knee injury, and that is just terrible for them because now Steelers are probably going to have to look at Mitchell Trubisky to start. They originally were going to be starting Mitchell Trubisky when Kenny Pickett first came on the scene, and I think they gave him like one game. They're like, get out of here, sir. You are done. We are putting Pickett in. Now they're going to have to look at him once again to play. Trubisky, obviously a top pick, got picked before Patrick Mahomes in his draft class, which is crazy. But we will probably be seeing some Mitchell Trubisky on Sunday in Week 5. Then we got Geno Smith. We all saw Geno Smith kind of go down with his knee injury. He missed a whole drive, and Drew Lock came down led the Seahawks to a pretty big drive and ended up scoring a touchdown. Kenneth Walker ran it in. Apparently, the knee injury for Geno Smith is not serious at the moment, so that's definitely good. Pete Carroll said it was not serious and that he should be back soon. So very happy to hear that as well. Mike Evans dealing with another hamstring injury, just another hamstring injury coming through. Mike Evans tweaked the hamstring on Sunday, and the coach was being a little bit weird about not, talking too deeply about it. He just didn't want to have any further reports. He was like, he tweaked his hamstring, and that just is what it is. So we'll definitely have to be monitoring Mike Evans and his situation moving forward, because right now, anytime your coach is not giving information on it, it doesn't seem like a good sign. Obviously, best receiver for the Bucks and a very good weapon for Baker Mayfield in that offense. So definitely keep an eye on Mike Evans. We got also a pair of wide receivers for the Commanders. Jahan Dotson with the ankle. He was a limited participant in practice today or yesterday on Monday. I think he sustained the ankle injury in week 4 as well. And then Curtis Samuel dealing with a quadricep issue. He was also a limited participant in practice on Monday. And that is pretty much the injury report to start. Make sure you stay with me so we can talk about these winners and losers from week 4. Very excited to talk about my quarterbacks and my tight ends that I liked and disliked in those week 4 matchups. So definitely come back, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here. We are here again on a beautiful Tuesday night. Really only playoff baseball going on tonight. Obviously got a Thursday night matchup that I'm not very excited for. Don't even want to talk about it. Let's get right into my quarterback winners from week 4. We're only going to be talking about winners in this segment. Super excited to talk about it, so let's get into it with Anthony Richardson, who had a pretty big game coming off that concussion that he sustained. Missed a game, and then Gardner Minshew was taking over those quarterback duties. He came back strong in week 4 and had himself a day. He went 11 for 25, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. Also added 10 rushes for 56 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He was definitely a guy that I was interested in getting in on. I got him, I think, in the 10th round of my draft, and just thought he was going to be almost like a running back type candidate. And we're seeing that come to fruition right now with, receiving these 10 carries a game. And obviously he has the discretion on whether or not he wants to be running the ball. But a very, very strong runner. This guy runs a 4.4 and is 225 at 6'3" plus. He's a big guy. Currently tying Lamar right now for quarterback touchdowns with 4 in the 3 games that he's played. 4 rushing touchdowns in 3 games is definitely very good, and he's not looking too bad when it comes to his completion percentage or his passing game. He's a very strong arm too, 57% completion percentage, and it's definitely going to rank somewhere in that middle tier of the NFL. He currently has a better completion percentage than Jordan Love, which is beautiful to see from a guy who is first year and still learning the offense, still learning how to play in this very strong league where there's a bunch of guys that are very strong. It is literally like you're supposed to have 10 plus car crashes when you're playing in the NFL. That's the equivalent. So he just needs to get ready and, be strong. I think he's probably the strongest quarterback in the entire league besides maybe Josh Allen. But I think he could probably give Josh Allen a run for his money, whether it be like, bench press or throwing the ball 80-plus yards. He has the ability to do that, and we really haven't been able to see him uncork like a massive bomb yet, but I know that it's coming later in the season, so just wait on that. Led the Colts to almost a 20-point comeback in this game. Down like 20 points, and he ended up scoring a big touchdown for them and came up just short, had a chance to win it at the end, and just couldn't convert on that last drive. But I definitely like what I saw from Anthony Richardson this week. He ended up with 29.6 fantasy points in Week 4 and finished as the second quarterback in Week 4 as well with those 29 points, only to Josh Allen. Josh Allen was numero uno quarterback in Week 4. Next guy who's definitely a winner, usually a winner in most weeks, and that's going to be Jalen Hurts. Finished with 24.1 fantasy points in the Week 4 matchup versus the Commanders. Went 25 for 37, 319 yards through the air, and 2 touchdowns. Also added in 9 carries for 34 yards in a very close game, a nail biter versus the Commanders, and they just were able to squeak it out. Probably a little bit closer than they liked, and their defense wasn't playing too good, but Jalen was able to lead them to that win. Jalen Hurts, fourth-year quarterback, obviously out of Bama and then also out of Oklahoma as well. He just looks really unbothered out there. You see him in his interviews, and you see him on the field. He just looks really cool, calm, and collected, ready for the moment, whatever is to come. He'll just deal with it and handle it. I imagine that he'll be the guy at quarterback to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns just because of that tush-push that they run, that people are saying that everybody needs to ban. And it's not like I disagree. It's an overpowered play, but I think the defense just needs to find a way to combat it and find a way to counter that play. Because I don't really think that you can ban that type of play. Because it's not like they're cheating in any way. But Jalen Hurts, man, just looking great, throwing the deep ball very, very well. I think he kind of looks better in the pocket than he does even running the ball right now. Deep ball looks great. He found A.J. Brown twice on pretty deep passes for touchdowns both times. So definitely good. He's got weapons everywhere in this offense. Obviously, they added DeAndre Swift, too, who is technically a pass-catching back. We haven't really seen the pass-catching prowess from him yet, but skinny Batman in Devontae Smith, swole Batman in A.J. Brown, and then solid options in Dallas Goedert, Olamide Zaccheaus has looked really good, and then obviously DeAndre Swift. Eagles currently 4-0 and rolling with Hurts at quarterback, and I love to see Jalen Hurts popping off. He was definitely a winner in Week 4. Next guy, and I know everybody's constantly hating on this guy all the time. Everybody always hating on Russell Wilson, but I think he was a Week 4 winner in this matchup versus the Bears. Obviously, probably the two least talented NFL teams matching up, so we were able to see a little bit more from Russell Wilson, a couple more open receivers because of a lack of coverage, but still 22.2 fantasy points in Week 4. He's currently the quarterback 9 in fantasy football, so someone who you can look to rely on possibly to be your backup quarterback or even your starter. In some cases, he went 21 for 28 for 223 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Really love to see Russ taking care of the ball and not taking any wild chances, throwing picks for no reason. Led the Broncos on a big comeback. Had a really bad first half. They were down 28-7 to start this game with a nice 21-point cushion that Justin Fields had, and they came back and won it really late. Very exciting. Very proud of Russell Wilson just as a Colorado, guy. Very proud of him for not folding under pressure because, that's what the haters want. That's what Future wants. Future wants Russell Wilson to fold under pressure, and he's just not going to do that. It seems like he is staying out of the media, staying out of the press. I really haven't heard anything from him or his side. Definitely probably, I think, has more touchdowns than bathrooms at his house currently, and that's what people were talking about last year. So proud of him for that as well. Threw multiple strikes when his team needed it in big situations, big third downs. He was just converting And, I think there's a bit of life in this Broncos offense. They got their first win, hopefully some confidence, and Russell Wilson at the helm. They'll be playing their Week 5 matchup versus the Jets in a dire must-win situation. They got Zach Wilson playing quarterback on the other side. Obviously just showed out against Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. So we shall definitely see. We don't know what we're going to get from Russ on a week-to-week basis, but he's absolutely in a must-win spot in Week 5 versus a solid Jets pass rush and Jets coverage secondary. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited for Russ. I think he looks better. He also looks faster too, just running the football and putting his life on the line. So we'll see what happens. Finally, for my last quarterback winner before we get into my quarterback losers in Week 4, and that'll be my third segment. This is still the second, and we're going with Baker Mayfield, guys. Baker Mayfield, a guy that I usually am hating on just because of his bad decisions with the ball. He's obviously been on multiple teams, and he hasn't really found a home that he can succeed and thrive in. It seemed like he was just cool to do his progressive commercials or whatever commercials that he was doing, but it seems like he's actually looking into being a real quarterback now. So very, very cool. Baker Mayfield leading the Bucs right now to a 3-1 start, very hot start for the Bucs, and he has a lot of weapons to draw from. So very exciting. He's right now completing 69% of his balls, which is unheard of from Mr. Baker Mayfield. We really haven't seen him be a really efficient quarterback that stays in the pocket and just throws rifles downfield, but that's looking like what he's trying to do this year. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, a number 1 pick in his draft class, and I'm happy that he is finally finding a way to find some success in his offense. He's got guys like Evans, Godwin, Auten, and Devin Tompkins, who is also a very speedy, quick wide receiver. Definitely has the weapons to do it, and we'll see if Baker can continue to show signs of life in that Buccaneers offense. If he can continue to just keep it going. He obviously has a really good receiving back too in Rashad White, who he can throw those checkdowns to. So I just really appreciate right now Baker not having to do too much, just being the quarterback that he knows how to be. Obviously, this guy has played football his whole life, and multiple people were very high on him, enough for him to go as the first pick in the entire draft, which is just crazy because he definitely wasn't the best athlete by any means in that draft. In this Week 4 matchup, he went 25 for 32, 246 yards, and 3 tutties for Baker. He also did throw a pick, but we know that Baker's a gunslinger, and he's going to try to push the ball downfield and make plays. He also added in 8 carries for 31 yards. I appreciate that he's willing to put his body on the line for his team. Seems like that's the type of guy that he really always was, a guy that really didn't care about himself or his personal health from that regard, and always just doing anything he can to win games. He is currently the quarterback number 14 in fantasy right now, and the Bucs are going into a bye with a 3-1 start. I'm sure everybody is happy over there. Head coach definitely happy with Baker's play, and we'll see if he can continue that 69% completion percentage that he is boasting right now. Guys, when I come back, we're going to talk quarterback losers from Week 4, and I'm just going to give you a sneak peek. We're definitely talking about Joe Burrow in this next segment, so come back with me. What's good, ladies and gentlemen? We are here talking about my quarterback losers. Let's get the graphics up. And I told y'all that my first quarterback loser was going to be this guy. This guy has not shown up. For his standards, he has not shown up even one time this season, in my opinion. Joe Burrow, currently the number one paid player in the entire league. Has the most bread in his pocket currently, former number one pick too, and he is currently ranked as quarterback number 31 in fantasy football right now. Holy smokes, not okay from Joe Burrow, supposed to be a top 5 quarterback type guy, someone that I know you guys were drafting very high in your fantasy leagues, and I think Burrow might just be enjoying that money a little too much, balling out, doing whatever he's doing in his personal life, whatever he's allowed to do that. He's completely allowed to do whatever he wants in his personal life, but on the field, only has thrown 2 touchdowns the entire season. He has played in all the games. He has, recorded every single start and has only thrown 2 touchdowns all season. Both of them are to T. Higgins, so if that has any sign for maybe T. Higgins being a little bit better and getting some red zone targets, maybe, but Bengals not off to a very good start at all. 1-3 record so far, and have had multiple games, 2 games currently, where they have only scored 3 total points in their entire game. They did that in week 1, and then they also did that in week 4, only putting up 3 points. So they can't even drive down the field and get a field goal. Like, they are just struggling on offense. Like I said, Joe Burrow, very high ADP. When it was, early draft season, everybody was looking to have Joe Burrow start as their quarterback because, he has 2 major weapons, 2 probably top 5, I guess you could say top 10 receivers with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but he just can't find a way to get them the ball. The whole offense is just in shambles right now, and the only guy who's doing anything on their offense, it seems, is Joe Mixon. Very unfortunate for Joe right now. Very, very unfortunate. He's also struggling with a lingering calf injury that I guess he's been struggling through this entire first part of the season, but not enough for him to sit down. So I can't really give him the benefit of the doubt here. It just seems like Joe Burrow is struggling and very down bad. They're going to be playing against a Arizona Cardinals team who is just kind of makeshifted together and created in a couple of weeks, it seems. Josh Dobbs playing as their quarterback. They're going to play against them in week 5, and I don't understand how this is not an absolute must-win for Joe Burrow and the boys. Another bad performance in week 5 will spell disaster for this Bengals team in general. Next guy we got to talk about, he's also a loser in week 4. Another guy, I guess the last 3 guys we talked about, Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, and Bryce Young, all number 1 picks in their respective draft classes. Obviously, Bryce Young being the most recent first pick, and he currently sits at quarterback number 32 in fantasy football. Very, very bad start to the season for Bryce Young. Absolutely awful. Week 4 came out 25 for 32, 204 yards, no touchdowns, and a fumble. Those 204 yards were also his season high and also technically his career high that he's thrown for at all. So I guess this was his best game in a really, really bad showing from the Panthers. Bryce Young also missed week 3 with an ankle injury, so he's obviously struggling a little bit with injury, but was ready to go for week 4 and did not put up impressive performance. This guy just really has no elite weapons. I actually just saw a report on Twitter that they're looking for a wide receiver 1, a solid, reliable wide receiver 1 that Bryce Young can actually throw to, because obviously Adam Thielen, Adam Thielen is like the perfect wide receiver 2 for your team, but I don't think he can really be the guy that you just put all the weight on his shoulders and like take us to the promised land. Adam Thielen, he's 33 years old at that point, and I just don't think he has the gas in the tank. I think they need a young, bruising wide receiver who's able to actually do some damage for this offense, because they really do not have one, like I said. Also, Bryce Young just in a really bad position. PFF ranks the offensive line for the Carolina Panthers as the 29th rated pass block. There's only 32 teams in the league, guys, so he's in a really bad spot. He knew that he was going into a bad spot. Obviously, when you get drafted at number 1, you know that you're going to probably the worst team in the entire NFL. A very unfortunate situation for a very talented football player, in my opinion. And, He's a number one pick. I saw him do a lot at Bama, threw for like 70-plus touchdowns in 2 years at Bama. So I think it could look up for him, but I don't know if this season is going to be his season in any way. He was the guy I actually picked to win Offensive Rookie of the Year over C.J. Stroud when the Texans are my favorite team. So, where does my loyalty lie? Next, we got to talk about this guy, man. Heard somebody saying that Mac Jones was the second coming of Tom Brady, and I just don't see it. I don't see the work ethic there. I don't see the performances there, and I don't see that dog in him like Tom Brady had. And I think that showed improved very much so in Week 4 with his 0.7 fantasy points in Week 4. Got blown out 38-3 by Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Dak was not even that impressive in this game, and it was pretty much everybody else doing the work. Mac Jones, 12 for 21, 150 yards, and 2 interceptions. 12 for 21, 150, and 2 interceptions. He was actually benched by Coach Belichick in this game, and they went to Bailey Zappi later in the game. Obviously, the game was already decided at this point, but they decided to sit him down because he just wasn't looking very good. Week 1, I saw a big game from Mac Jones and was very excited about it. Came out 360 solid defense in that game. Since then, very average performances in weeks 2 and 3, and then the 0.7 fantasy points in Week 4. Not looking like a guy you should be starting on your fantasy team in any way. Even if you are desperate, you got to go get Josh Dobbs or C.J. Stroud or somebody who's sitting on that waiver wire. It can't be Mac Jones at this point. I don't think it is confirmed right now that he will continue to start for the squad. They're not going to end up going with Bailey Zappi, so we will see more Mac Jones action in weeks to come. But I just think this is a really weird offense. They don't have like any elite wide receiver. Obviously, they brought in Juju, and there's been multiple reports that a lot of the people on the Patriots squad think that Juju is like the 4th most talented pass catcher on this Patriots team. So that's not very good. When the guy that you're probably paying the most money is your 4th most talented pass catcher on the entire squad. I just think Mac Jones is just going to continue to struggle against elite teams with elite coverages, and he'll be seeing an elite defensive backfield in Week 5 with Tyrann Mathieu, Marshawn Lattimore, all those guys playing for the Saints, and they will play against them in Week 5. So we'll see if Mac Jones can get himself to be a winner in Week 5 rather than a loser in Week 5. Finally, going to cap it off with this dude, Kenny Pickett, another very highly touted quarterback prospect who has shown a couple, good games, couple good signs. Obviously has a very big arm, and he's pretty elusive with his feet, can definitely make some plays to get out of trouble. But he was definitely not doing that in the game versus the Texans. Another very bad performance from Kenny Pickett, and we saw this all last year, just bad performances from Kenny Pickett. This week went 15 for 23, 114 yards, and an interception. The interception, I was like looking back at it, it didn't look too bad. He just tried a deep ball, and it just didn't go his way. He did throw it into double coverage, which is never good, but not the worst interception that I've ever seen, but unfortunately this guy just throws a lot of picks, and in 4 weeks throughout the season, he's already thrown 4 picks, so definitely not good. Very unfortunate situation for Kenny Pickett, and he's also getting pressured constantly. I told you that Bryce Young and the Panthers offensive line was PFF rated 29th offensive line. Steelers are currently 32nd offensive line for pass block rating. So obviously this guy is probably very scared back there. He's got 250-pound guys who run 4.5s coming right at him, full head of steam with no blocking. So very scared. At least I would be very scared for that. They're also missing their best receiver in Deontay Johnson, who is dealing with his own hamstring injury. Make sure you stretch your hamstrings. But as far as Pickett goes, sailing balls, not able to complete a lot of his passes, and maybe because of this glove that he's wearing on his hand. There's only special quarterbacks can really throw with that glove on, and I just don't know if he is ready for that. He looks very nervous back there, constantly running, and obviously a lot of that is going to be attributed to that really bad Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. They need some help there, really, really bad. But he's a strong arm guy. I think he should just be chilling in the pocket more often. Someone who is capable of making a lot of throws, and we saw that in college at Pitt where he was just like a monster. Obviously, we saw the fake slide, very athletic type dude too, but it's just not looking very good. He also sustained that knee injury this game, so we might be seeing Mitchell Trubisky pop out in Week 5. They will be playing against Baltimore in that game, so I'm not very excited to see what's to come if Kenny Pickett's not in. Even if Kenny Pickett is in, he hasn't really shown us enough to think that he is going to contest these Baltimore Ravens in any way. When I come back, we're going to be talking about tight end winners and losers. We're going to talk the best tight ends and the tight ends that didn't do too good in Week 4, so make sure you come back. What is good, guys? We are back. We're not talking injury report any longer. We will be talking about tight ends, winners and losers in Week 4. Obviously, the tight end situation for everybody has probably been a little bit thin. If you don't have one of those top 5 guys, there's been multiple tight ends putting up single-digit numbers every single game. So, unfortunate to see. But we're going to talk about the guys that had a good week and a bad week in Week 4 here. And I want to start off with Mark Andrews, who is obviously a beast. Mark Andrews was dealing with a quad injury, I believe, in Week 1, and that's why he did not play in that matchup versus Houston. Didn't really need him. He came back Week 2, had a really good week, 5 receptions, 45 yards, and the touchdown on 8 targets. In Week 3, he went for 4 receptions, 35 yards, kind of like a fell-off type game. Still put up 7.5 fantasy points, which is a lot better than a lot of tight ends are doing, especially with his consistency. And then came back Week 4 and had a monster day. 5 receptions, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught all 5 of his targets, ended up with 25 fantasy points. And, you know, we just love to see it. Obviously, Mark Andrews is going to be one of Lamar Jackson's most prominent weapons moving forward. Obviously, Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham are sitting out, so that adds even more fantasy value to Mark Andrews, and he's definitely the guy that they're looking for in those short yardage type situations to make big third down plays. Love what I saw from Mark Andrews in a 28-3 win, and he was contributing, scoring 2 touchdowns. Obviously, super good for the Goat Whale if y'all follow the Goat Whale and Trent's whole situation with that. He's got Mark Andrews touchdowns in there for 7, I think, and I think he's already at 3, so definitely very good. Next guy we have to talk about this guy because he popped off this week with a 2 touchdown performance as well, just like Mark Andrews, and that is Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet has quietly been putting together a solid fantasy season, currently ranked ahead of Mark Andrews at tight end 3 in all of fantasy football right now, and I think Justin Fields likes this guy, guys. I definitely do. Week 1, 7 targets, ended up putting up 9 fantasy points, 6 targets in the next week versus Tampa Bay, only 7.8 fantasy points. Had a bit of a fall-off day versus Kansas City, but I think the whole Bears squad had a really big fall-off day. That day only put up 5.2 fantasy points. came back versus Denver, who has the worst rated coverage in the entire league, and finally had a really good day. 7 receptions, 85 yards, and the 2 touchdowns. Got 9 targets that game, and also somehow recorded a carry. Ended up with 27.6 fantasy points. He was the tight end 1 in week 4. Don't know if we can always expect this type of game from Cole Kmet, and he's kind of shown throughout the season that we can't expect those type of games, but love to see him pop off. Denver worst rated coverage, so it makes a lot of sense, but Cole Kmet is right behind DJ Moore for targets and yards in that Bears offense, so technically you can kind of treat him as like a wide receiver 2 in that situation. Obviously have a really bad throwing quarterback most games. Justin Fields was popping off this game, completed like his first 16 passes in the entire game, so that was good, but someone to keep an eye on. If you spent a late round flyer on Cole Kmet, it seems like it could find a way to pay off just because of the usage, and I just like him moving into week 5 versus Washington, who gave up 33 points to Denver in that late win that they had. Next guy we got to talk about, and he is a rookie who I've been talking about pretty much all season, currently ranked as tight end number 8 in all of fantasy football. Has had a couple good games. The targets are really what it is with this guy. I've talked about Jake Ferguson, tight end number 1 technically for the Dallas Cowboys. Very, very solid player, very strong player. Looks like he could squat like 600 pounds or something like that. But week 1, 7 targets. Week 2, only 4 targets against CJ Mosley and a pretty good Jets linebacking core, but caught a touchdown that game. Which is definitely a good sign. It looks like he's also a red zone threat, Jake Ferguson is. Week 3, came back, 5 receptions, 48 yards on 7 targets. Week 4, 7 receptions for 77 yards, led the team in yards in Week 4 versus the New England Patriots, and also picked up another 7 targets. So, guys, when we see 7 targets from the tight end, that's a guy that you just automatically have to put into the lineup. It's kind of no question about it. If he is getting the usage and the team likes him, usually these are big guys who are looked at in the red zone, so always a threat to score a touchdown. Jake Ferguson only has 1 touchdown through the season right now, but 7 receptions for 77 yards, put up 14.7 fantasy points. Absolutely going to get it done from your tight end position. Most tight ends really only score like 6-7 points, and that's like a really average day, but it looks like we can maybe expect a little bit more out of Jake Ferguson moving throughout the season. Finally, for my winners, just still talking about winners right now, I got to go with Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee has not been too shabby for the Rams. Obviously, Rams missing their top wide receiver threat, and Cooper Kupp should be back in week 5, so we'll see how that affects Tyler Higbee's his rankings and stuff like that. Higbee currently listed as tight end number 9 in fantasy football. So, a top 10 tight end as it pertains to fantasy, and not too bad. He's been coming on as of late, and last week versus the Cincinnati Bengals, 5 receptions for 71 yards, and that equated to 12 fantasy points. Next game, 5 receptions for 64 yards on 11 targets. So, love to see that. It seems that he had banged up his thumb just a bit in that overtime victory that they were able to accomplish versus the Colts, but 11 targets definitely going to get it done. We'll see if he's able to continue that type of production when a guy like Cooper Kupp comes back. Obviously, Kupp is going to take like 10 plus targets himself, and Puka Nacua is getting a ton of targets too. So I will consider him a winner in week 4, but he might have to move to the losers list, because I know anybody who's ever owned Tyler Higbee in a fantasy lineup knows that he has the propensity to disappear, and he's not someone I'm like super high on, but I thought that he did enough to deserve to be a winner in week 4. Let's talk losers now. Got to talk losers and guys who did bad from the tight end position, because there was a lot of them, but I got to just highlight the main guys that I saw that have a lot of talent and just did not play to that talent. And the first guy that I want to talk about is going to be Senior Darren Waller, who I know a lot of y'all are spending high draft picks on. I think he was going in like the 5th round of most fantasy leagues, and he is not panning out right now, guys. Somehow still listed as tight end number 12. So, behind a guy like Tyler Higbee, that's unfortunate and unacceptable for Darren Waller. And, the amount of talent that he has, it's just ridiculous. Week 4 versus the Seattle Seahawks, obviously Monday Night Football matchup, and they got smoked. 3 receptions for 21 yards and only had 3 targets in that entire game. Obviously, Daniel Jones, I think, was sacked 11 times in that matchup, so that's going to play into that. I'm sure at least 1 or 2 of those play calls are probably supposed to go to Waller, and this was the lowest targets game that we saw from him as well in weeks 1 through 3. Week 1, he went 5 targets against Dallas. Week 2, 8 targets against Arizona, and then week 3, 7 targets versus the San Francisco 49ers. They had a pretty tough run. It looks like they have one of the hardest schedules in the entire league. In the next couple weeks, they got to go play at Miami and then at Buffalo. So not looking up for Darren Waller, not looking up for the entire Giants squad, especially if they can't get Saquon back. Darren Waller, very disappointing fantasy performance up to this point in the season, and I don't really see it getting much better against these tough defenses. They're also going to have to go or they're going to play the Jets at home. They got Dallas again. They got to play Philly too. It's just like a whole situation for Darren Waller, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to find any momentum at this point in the season. It just doesn't look like it. No, it does not. Guys, there's a stream thing right here. If y'all so kind, you want to drop a donation or a tip for a young podcast host, that would be so appreciated. Also, make sure you check out the Patreon. I'll be recording my Patreon segment after this, probably talking about waiver wire guys. So if you want to get on that, just subscribe to the Patreon. The link is in the bio. Next guy we got to talk about, and man, this guy is so disappointing. So disappointing. I'm talking about Kyle Pitts. Somehow Darren Waller is moving up to tight end 12 in fantasy football. Kyle Pitts isn't even trying out there. He is tight end number 29 in all of fantasy at the moment, and he just put up another terrible performance in week 4 at Jacksonville. Obviously, they were playing that London game where the Toy Story situation was out, and we did not see him as a toy making any plays. 2 receptions for 21 yards on 4 targets. Jonnu Smith completely outdid him. Jonnu Smith is technically the tight end 2, and I think he performed as he was the tight end 3 in all of fantasy football this week. Jonnu Smith went 6 receptions for 95 yards, while Kyle Pitts went 2 receptions for 21 yards. Really, really bad day, so I got to classify him as a loser in week 4, no question, and I really don't know what type of fantasy value he's going to continue to have. He'd had one game, week 3 versus Detroit. He got the 9 targets, and I kind of thought things were possibly looking up for him, and he would be more of a part of this offense, more involved, but came back with just 4 targets in week 4. Desmond Ridder just is not like an elite quarterback. With these tight ends, you really do need a guy who is able to find him a lot and able to give him the volume that he needs to make plays. Kyle Pitts, literally a 4-4 tight end that could probably play receiver, and Desmond Ridder and head coach just aren't finding any way to make him known in this offense. They're going to be going up against Houston in their week 5 matchup, who have definitely been known to give up some receiving yards, so possibly looking up. But right now, Kyle Pitts, absolute loser in week 4 of fantasy football. Goodness gracious, Kyle Pitts. We got to talk about George Kittle, because I'm sure a lot of y'all were watching this 49ers game. Is anybody else besides McCaffrey going to touch the ball ever? Is that going to ever happen for us? Is George Kittle going to get a catch? George Kittle did get a catch, but he only got 1 catch. 1 catch for 9 yards on 1 target. And I told y'all this. I was actually picked George Kittle to be one of my favorite guys, favorite matchups, obviously going up against a pretty bad Arizona team, missing their starting safety in Budda Baker, and it's unfortunate, but George Kittle just has a way of disappearing in some games, and he really doesn't care if he disappears because he is blocking his behind off constantly. He might as well just be an O-lineman in some games, and we just don't know game by game if it's going to be here or there, if he's going to, like last week against the Giants, 7 receptions for 90 yards, got interviewed after the game and, was looking all happy and looking like he was finally going to be a part of this offense moving forward, and then I guess they just didn't need him. They completely smacked the Arizona Cardinals, so it makes sense why he was not part of the game plan. because of Christian McCaffrey having such a big day. I'm sure George was out there blocking everybody that he possibly could, but he'll be going up against Dallas and Micah Parsons in week 5. So this could be another blocking game for George Kittle. Very, explosive guy when he wants to be, but it seems like he is content to just chill and block for his teammates because he's just a team-first guy. Tight end number 14 in fantasy football right now. Struggling if you have George Kittle. I'm sure you're expecting more from him, and he did not do that. I have to qualify him as a loser this week, but his team is winning, so I'm sure he does not care what I think. Finally, we got to go to this dude, tight end for the Carolina Panthers. We thought that this was going to be Bryce Young's one of his favorite targets. I'm talking about Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst currently listed as tight end number 27, so also really, really bad. Had a great week 1, obviously threw that first touchdown to Bryce Young in his entire career. Week 1, 5 receptions, 41 yards, and the touchdown on 7 targets. And I'm sure Hayden Hurst owners were like, oh, well, this is my guy. I can just go with him, and he's going to actually perform for me. Since then, in weeks 2 through 4, 3 targets, 3 targets, 3 targets, 5 points, 2.1 points, 1.7 points. So it's all bad right now for Hayden Hurst. I never considered him as an elite athlete by any means or someone who could just get open constantly and be a weapon for Bryce Young, but I thought he was going to find a way to, make some plays for this team. And, just like he was doing with Joe Burrow the last couple of years, he looked good and he looks non-existent on the field at this point. Have to qualify him as a loser for week 4, no question. Tight end number 27, never going to get it done. And I wouldn't blame you if you dropped Hayden Hurst at this point, especially with the news out that the Panthers are looking for a new wide receiver 1. Somehow that could play into his favor just because the attention will be more off of him, but I don't think the attention was really on Hayden Hurst to start with. So definitely all bad. Not very excited for this Panthers offense in any way, and we'll see if they can get it together, guys. It's definitely looking scary over there. But guys, that's going to wrap up the episode. I appreciate y'all if you're watching, and make sure y'all check out the Patreon if you want to. I'm going to be giving out my waiver takes, guys that I really like on the waiver wire. I know a lot of us are struggling in fantasy football right now, and I'm going to try to get us up good soon. And if you want to drop a tip, support the show, Stream Elements / GSMC Sports Network. That's where you can do it. I appreciate you guys for watching, and come back tomorrow, 7 p.m. We're going to be doing another live show. Have a good day.